Welcome, everybody. I'm here with Christine Peterson from the Foresight Institute, who's spoken a lot in the past about nanotechnology, but also health and well-being, organising conferences and such. I'll hand it over to you to first introduce yourself and what you're currently doing and some of the interesting projects you've been involved in the past, and then later we'll move on to the media performance of anti-aging and specifically Google's Calico company.
Okay, well, Adam, as you know, and some of your viewers may also know, I was one of the co-founders of Foresight Institute, which is primarily focused on nanotechnology. So I've been involved in that for, oh gosh, over 25 years. More recently, I've taken a greater interest in anti-aging and life extension, longevity. I did a couple of conferences called the Personalized Life Extension Conferences, and now I'm doing a video conference series called Health Activator, which has a very similar focus. So, yeah, this is a big interest of mine.
Yeah, it's great that you're doing that, and I've actually seen some of your videos before, some of the talks you've given, and they've been very good. So we did an interview when I was in San Francisco because I was one of the organisers of Humanity Plus conference, so that's up online for anybody interested in watching that too. But on to the idea that it seems as though some of the anti-aging initiatives are becoming more mainstream, maybe via just Google, this big powerhouse of like money. What can they do with $55 billion or whatever to the anti-aging initiative? Maybe they can do a lot. But it also, I think, an interesting point is, well, I might ask you, do you think Google's advocacy will help shape people's attitude towards anti-aging?
I would imagine that it's probably going to make anti-aging more mainstream, just seem more mainstream. Yet another entity, one they've heard of, one they probably use every day, is now associated with the concept. So from that perspective, yes, I would assume it would probably make this idea of increasing longevity seem more of a mainstream concept. I would think.
Oh, that can only be a good thing from our perspective, right?
I would assume so, yeah. I mean, you can question other aspects of it, but from that perspective, yeah, I think it's a got to be a good thing.
True. Um, Now it's interesting what they did say. From memory, they said that they were looking at doing research for the long term of anti-aging. To me, that sounds like they're not interested in just being focused on short-term technological spin-offs. What is the value of long-term research into anti-aging in comparison to short-term technological spin-offs?
Well, I think if you really want to address the issue of the aging problem, you have to do long-term research. So that's actually encouraging that they're taking that perspective. To the extent they do take that perspective, it's very early days yet. We have to see actually what happens. Um, but the basic concept that what is needed is very basic research into the aging process, and it's I should call it may perhaps I should call it the aging processes, since there seem to be so many different aspects of it. It's not one thing, as you know. It's pretty encouraging that they're taking that perspective. So again, I'd say there are pros and cons here, but that would seem to be a big pro.
Definitely. So, um, well, one of the things that I'm worried about is that if there is a lot of money involved, at some stage, some project manager or through whatever means, the goals may shift towards shorter term technological spin offs so as to justify huge amounts of investment early on. So, yeah, is that a concern that you have?
Well, certainly there's always the possibility of being distracted.
Hmm.
Um, if the research is successful at finding anything of use, then the natural thing is to want to spin it off and to make money with that. which the goal then would be, one would hope, would be to feed that back into the
Mm.
research process. That
Yes.
would be what we would hope would
Yeah.
happen with the money, of course.
Mm.
We don't, but it's not our money. We don't get to say what happens to it. So, yeah, there's the possibility of being distracted. Uh, the main things I would be nervous about really are in different areas, though. I wouldn't necessarily say that near-term spin-offs are necessarily a bad thing, especially for those of us who are getting up there. I mean, if there are short-term fixes, I'm all for those.
Mm. Yeah. So same. Exactly. But what am worried about is, like, in 10 or 20 years' time, we may have gone a lot further if we weren't distracted. So yes, what like you said, short-term spin-offs are very valuable if especially if they don't distract from the larger long-term purpose. Yeah.
Right, right. And if they can, if they can, for example, let's say that one of the spin-offs might conceivably help with Alzheimer's.
Mm,
Um, that has societal benefit in the sense that
absolutely.
societal costs are going to go up very fast for that. So if we can get those down, it helps society in general. That some of that money might go into anti-aging research. Otherwise, it's just a general societal benefit. So I can't really say it's a bad thing.
Mm.
I think as the various funders, not just at Google but at other entities, age themselves, I think it will help them focus.
That's interesting. Well, there's, I guess, nanotechnology, for instance. The initial ideas of nanotechnology were different from material sciences. But there was a lot of funding for material sciences and not the fundamental research into atomically precise manufacturing. Do you think, well, that was government funding, right? Like towards Richard Smalley's sort of vision of nanotechnology. Was that a distraction to the larger picture of nanotechnology, or was it okay to do that? Was it, yeah.
Well, I think we can all agree that new materials are wonderful things. I think in this particular case, there was an element of distraction. Speaking as an advocate of science and technology, I would say probably both visions deserved funding.
Hmm.
New materials are great. Atomically precise manufacturing is great. We want both.
Hmm. Yeah, that's right. So, but in that case, it seems as though the material science has got all the money, or most of the money, um, while the atomically precise manufacturing was a little bit neglected.
Yes, that's true. That is what happened there. Part of the reason for that is I think that the term nanotechnology was still pretty much up in the air. It could be redefined in different ways. I think the term anti-aging is clearer, and
Hmm.
longevity. Those are clearer terms.
Okay.
So I think it's less likely to be confused in that way.
Hmm. There's a lot of transhumanists who are getting excited about the prospect of Google throwing a lot of money at the idea of anti-aging, and working on fundamental research, but also interested in the wider community's reaction to these sorts of technologies coming about. Do you think Google doing this sort of thing, funding anti-aging, is like a tip of the head to transhumanism? Maybe not intended, but do you think a larger community will be more accepting of transhumanism because of such things, such large scale scientific endeavors?
Well, I think young people at least, the more they're exposed to these big vision ideas, let's call them big vision ideas, the more they're exposed to those, whether it's private space launches or private efforts for longevity, um, they're bound to sort of see this as how the world should be, right? We should have private space. We should have longevity. These things are being funded by entities they've heard of. They get to watch some of it on TV, the private space launches. So at least for the younger generation, yeah, I would say it's going to make the whole thing feel more reasonable. Um, a lot in terms of anyone else, I think a lot of it has to do with the terminology you use to introduce these ideas. I think if we insist on using the term transhumanism per se, I think for a lot of folks that probably will put them off. But if you use terminology that they can understand and that they feel maybe more comfortable with, um, I think that they can get used to it much faster. I mean, um, I can remember before the internet, and we've been able to get used to that, right? It doesn't seem amazing at all anymore. Now it's just like you turn the faucet, you get water, you plug in a cord, you get the internet. It's just a utility now. So uh, I think it's just a matter of time, and I think the terminology does matter. We want to try to use terms that people can get comfortable with pretty fast. I'm
Mm.
not sure transhumanism necessarily is one of those.
Mm. Well, what terminology? Well, can you give me some examples of terminology to use in lieu of transhumanism?
Well, I'm not sure. It depends on what we're talking about. It's possible that it may be hard to come up with a broad term that works. We may have to focus on individual things like the longevity, like the private space, more specific terminology.
Mm.
I'd have to give that some thought. I know a
Yeah.
lot of people have thought about this.
Mm.
That's one reason why Humanity Plus uses that term. It's a
That's
new
right.
term for
Yeah.
them.
Hmm.
And that was a specific and deliberate rebranding. So that takes a lot of thought. I'm not sure there's an easy answer on this one.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I do believe that we need to shape our stories in a way that's more accepting to wider communities who would otherwise reject it based on knee-jerk reactions to the idea. Here, what's interesting you brought up before, private space, but do you think a lot of the funding for science and technology should come from private endeavors like Google? Are you hopeful to see more of that in the future? And
I am
yeah.
hopeful. I am hopeful. I think that when funding comes from government
Mm.
sources, I think you're sort of constrained by a certain vision, and it tends to not be out of the box in general. And we saw that with nanotechnology. The government funding was not as visionary as one would hope.
Mhm.
Um, I think that if funding comes from individuals or from, and I'll say foundations that are still being guided by the founding individual, then you can see much more really innovative thinking and more ambitious goals.
Mm.
So yes, I would love to see whether it's whether it's set up as a for-profit or a non-profit. I don't really care as long as the individuals making these choices feel they have the freedom to spend the money in a big vision way, and that tends to be the case when the people who are spending the money made it themselves.
Mm.
They have a lot of confidence. They know they're smart people, so they tend to take more chances and implement more radical visions.
Mm.
Um, if you look at some of the old foundations that have been around for many decades, these are not run by the founders of the foundation anymore. They're not run by the person who made the original money, so they tend to be more conservative in their visions. Um, Not that that's necessarily always a bad thing, but from our perspective, if what we're looking for is longevity and really interesting anti-aging work, maybe that's not where you're going to see it.
Mm, that's interesting. Well, on that note, what do you think of the Obama Brain Project or the Brain Initiative and other large-scale government funding like the European Brain Project? Are these, I mean, they're obviously got to be good, but are these going to be as visionary as you'd like?
Probably not. I mean, my main reaction to the brain project suggested by, and I think it's been funded by under the current administration, was that I remember thinking, "Gosh, that's not much money."
Mm.
So, is this going to make a big difference? I'm not sure. It's a start,
Yeah.
but I think uh, there's a lot of private money out there. There's a lot of younger people now who have quite a bit of money under their control. The Google founders are a couple, but they're not the only ones.
Mm.
We're seeing a lot of very innovative research and for-profit efforts being funded, for example, by the Thiel Foundation,
Yeah.
with Peter Thiel,
Mm.
and there are many others who could chip in.
Mm.
Um, so I'm hoping we can get some more of this private money involved.
Yeah, same. One of the other headlines that made news, I guess, months ago now was Yuri Milner, Mark Zuckerberg, and Sergey Brin all sort of getting together with others and rewarding scientists for making uh, interesting discoveries. Were you aware of that one?
Yes, I did see
Yeah.
that, and that's a great thing. I mean, that's again another example of a new initiative coming from a whole new generation of folks who've made their own money, and so they have a lot of confidence. They feel that they have the ability and they can give themselves permission
Mm.
to make new rules,
Mm.
take on very ambitious new projects, um, and I think that can only be a good thing.
Yeah, definitely. And this whole permission concept actually is what maybe we allude to this before. It's exciting because the more advocacy we see from players that the general population trust for one reason or another, um, the more permission people feel they have to be able to talk about this without being laughed out of the conversation or laughed out of university or whatnot. So it's really good to see that there is more and more advocacy growing for some of these longer range technological or scientific experiments. So yeah, I'm very happy that that's happened. So yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to add? Is there any concluding thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to mention about the Google initiative on the anti-aging. I did read a critique by a young woman by the name of Maria
Yeah.
Konovalenko,
Yeah. Yes.
A
Yes. Yes. The
Russian,
Russian.
yes, the Russian woman,
Yeah.
and she'd had some concerns. I can't say I share them 100%, but she brought up a couple of good points I think we
Mm.
should at least mention.
Yeah. Sure.
One is she was concerned that people might say, well, Google is stepping up, so I don't have to fund SENS Foundation or the various other efforts anymore.
Mm.
And this was a concern for her, and I think that is a real concern. I don't think we can leave this to Google. That's
No.
not how it works.
Well, I hope
I
not.
think
Yeah.
we have to push as hard as we can.
Mm.
And that means continuing and, in fact, increasing whatever support we may be giving to SENS or any of the other projects.
Mm.
That's got to increase. Don't expect Google to do the job. Another concern she had, which I thought was a good point, was that if Google doesn't, if this project funded by Google doesn't make fast progress, people may say, well, gee, if Google can't do it, how can anyone do it?
Mm.
Then may think that it's a very hard problem. So, of course, it is a hard problem, but we don't want to be discouraged just because one entity is not moving as fast as they or we might have hoped.
Mhm.
So these are just a couple of concerns she brought up. I think those are relevant concerns. I think the community needs to keep pushing 100% or 200% and continuing to fund all the organizations we've been funding.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. One of the things that I'm working on now is finding a way that people in Australia can donate to organisations, especially SENS, since I've already spoken about this with Orbit Grey, in a tax deductible way. It's very because a lot of the organisations that are making difference are really working on these efforts are in San Francisco and in America or in England or somewhere like that, not in Australia. I mean, you can fund some pretty good research in Australia, that's true, but if you want to fund something like SENS or even the Foresight Institute, then it's very hard for people to do that in a tax deductible way. So,
It is a shame, and of course, Australia is not the only country that has this problem. I mean,
exactly, yeah.
we have it in so many places.
Mm.
I haven't been able to find an easy answer on this.
Mm.
These are not easy things to change,
Mhm.
but it's good that you're looking into it, and we
Mm.
would love to be able, both SENS, Foresight, all of the future-oriented nonprofits would love to get more international participation, and I totally agree that the tax deduction makes a difference.
Mm, yeah, when people's decision making about which charitable organisations to donate to. That's so true. Look, perhaps I shouldn't be jumping the gun and talking about this until I actually find a workable solution, but I'm excited about it anyway, so I brought it up.
Great.
Yeah. Anyway, it's been fantastic talking to you again, and been really interesting conversation. Thanks, viewers, for watching. And if there's is there any other concluding remarks that you'd like to make before
Other
I?
concluding remarks, I would just invite everyone to the Foresight Conference, of
Oh, yes.
course, coming up February 8th and 9th
Mm-hmm.
here in the Bay Area. It's on nanotechnology.
Excellent.
As for longevity and life extension, you're welcome to join us at Health Activator Online.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what we do them at 7 p.m. Pacific time. I have no idea what time that is. It's not too bad actually in Australia. I think that could actually work.
Mm.
I think you could watch it. It's maybe in the afternoon.
Okay.
So and then I myself am heading off in about a week and a half to the Quantified Self Conference.
Wow. Yeah. That
Also
sounds really
should
awesome.
be an awesome
Yeah.
conference. So I would maybe that will be filmed and your viewers can watch that.
Yeah, definitely. Well, my viewers are global. They might be able to make these conferences
Absolutely.
themselves.
Absolutely. I hope if any of you are there, come say hi to me.
Yeah, cheers. Oh, it's been fantastic. All right, well, I'll put some links in the description too. So check the description, subscribe, like, and awesome. Speak to you all very soon.
Great. Thanks, Adam. Bye-bye.